I'm Owen Bigland. This is the Inside Edge video blog. Okay, happy Saturday again. We're on a real roll here. I think this is my third video I've done so far this summer on a Saturday. I'm really enjoying them, and thanks for all the great feedback I get, and people email me saying that they really enjoy my Saturday blogs, and that's fantastic. I love doing these blogs. You know, I apologize that this last year has been busy for me. I haven't been doing it as much. I'm going to do my best to try and do at least one or two Saturday blogs a month here, because I love doing them. Kind of my philosophies on life, on staying in shape, on investing for retirement. You can take it from me. I've learned a few things in my old age here. As you guys know, if you've read my book, I've seen a lot of stuff. I've had some real winners, stuff that's gone very well, a few losers that you learn from, and hopefully you guys can extrapolate some of the advice I give you here. So this one, let's see where this one goes. I want to just kind of talk about the habits and the traits of successful people, kind of that millionaire mindset. I talk a lot about it in my book. As you guys know, I'm plugging my book these days because, boy, this book, guys, this was a labor of love. It took me 2.5 years to write this book. Still a bestseller on Amazon, $9, $10 on Kindle. It'll give you the roadmap, everything you're going to need to know on how to get some success in your life. Get your money invested. Get your money working for you passively, where it'll pay you to hold it. Take that income that's coming in, and hopefully if you're still working your day job, reinvest it and watch it compound and grow. And by the time you get into your mid-40s, like I did in the book, you'll hit this magical point called your crossover point, where the passive income you're earning from your real estate and your stocks is enough, if you wanted to retire and still live comfortably. Or keep working, or cut back on your work time and let this passive income, it's like a machine. Once you build it, it just keeps pumping out cash. And the nice thing is that it's indexed to inflation by 2- or 3-fold. And what I mean by that is the dividends I earn from my Johnson & Johnson and my Merck and my Visa and Costco and Apple, the dividend growth rate, so this is the amount that they increase that dividend every year, is probably right now, I ran the numbers last year, it took me a while, but it was around an 8.5% dividend growth rate. That's not my yield, that's the growth rate. So in other words, if they pay me $1 in dividend this year, next year it's $1.08. So when inflation's running at, what is it running now at, 3%? So I'm indexed 3-fold to inflation, and that's the beauty of dividends. All the companies I hold have a long track record of not just paying the dividend, but increasing it every year. Some of my tech names, are increasing that dividend by 15-20% year over year. The U.S. banks just recently had their earnings come out, and pretty much all of them, Wells Fargo, JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, I own all of them. We're talking anywhere from 9 to 15%. As a matter of fact, Goldman Sachs, I think, increased their divvy by around 24%. So this is incredible. If you're earning $100,000 this year in dividends passively, and you can get there, next year you might earn $110,000, and that's with not even investing any more money into these stocks. That's just the dividend growth. So you really start feeling it once you start building up that portfolio and getting those dividends going, and those dividends keep increasing by the companies you hold. The other thing, just quickly, stock market, I always like to go back. People will often ask me, clients, Owen, outside of your real estate and your real estate team, and I know you own rental properties, investment properties, do you own any other businesses? Do you have any other ventures? And I always tell them, yes. I own all kinds of ventures, dozens. I own McDonald's franchises. And I didn't know you owned a McDonald's franchise. Well, not directly, but I own $100,000 now, over $100,000 in McDonald's. It's one of my larger holdings. And you got to understand, when you own McDonald's, you own the company. I'm one of millions of shareholders, of course. But I share in every Big Mac, every French fry, every Egg McMuffin that's sold. I get a fraction of a cent. I'm an owner of McDonald's, and that's the way you always want to look at your stocks. It's not some enigma that a lot of people think, where you see a stock ticker and the price goes up and down day to day. When I buy a company like McDonald's or Visa or Costco, I always look at it as I'm now an owner in these incredible businesses, Apple, and I share in every iPhone they sell and every app and every iTunes subscription and every movie ticket bought for a new movie like Pitt's new F1 movie. That was produced and done by Apple. They own it. Every ticket that's sold for that movie that I went and saw a couple of weeks ago, I get a piece of that. And that's where you always want to look at it when you're investing your money. Real estate's pretty straightforward. You buy a condo, you own a percentage of the dirt, you own the unit. Stocks are a little more opaque, but they're not really. You own a piece of these wonderful businesses that many of them you could never recreate now. You know, I own a fairly large holding in CN Rail. Nobody's going to come along and build another, railroad from coast to coast. And that's why I have a lot of faith in just buying and holding these companies, because they're incredible businesses that with wide competitive moats that can't be recreated anymore. So guys, buy them, own them, hang on to them. They're so profitable that they don't know what to do with all the money they're earning, so they spin it out to you quarterly in the form of a dividend. And every year they raise those dividends because they just keep raising their prices, earning more money, and distributing it out to you as an owner or as a shareholder. Just off topic, one of the metrics, and this is something where I tell you guys, you want to learn your 100 or 150 hours. That's all it takes to just learn the basics of stock ownership, some of how things are taxed in the TFSA, the RRSP, the dividend withholding tax. Learn a bit about real estate, how amortization works on your mortgage, the ratio between the principal and the interest payments in the early years, and then how that gradually shifts to more principal payment, the tax advantages to owning and holding investment real estate, the leverage, which is, very misunderstood by most people, how leverage works and how using leverage, you don't want to over leverage, although they won't let you over leverage in Canada on a mortgage. It won't happen. But using that leverage and how that multiplies your success and your growth. But you got to learn this stuff. But a metric that I always look at with a company I own is something called the dividend payout ratio. And this is the amount that a company takes after tax earnings, what is being distributed out to the shareholders in the form of that quarterly dividend. The lower that number, the better. So I like to see a dividend payout ratio of under 60%, although it depends on the business. But most of the companies I hold, Apple, for instance, I think is paying, the dividend payout on it is something like 18-20%. A lot of those tech names that just started paying a dividend are paying an ultra low payout ratio. And that's great because it means that they can keep bumping up those dividends substantially in the coming years. I have a few companies like Altia and Philip Morris Tobacco. I've owned them for long periods of time. They have a much higher payout ratio. As a matter of fact, a lot of their profits are paid out to their shareholders. They have very good yield. But that's okay with those companies because, you see, they're very restricted on advertising or growth. They're very old businesses that are cash machines, and most of it is paid out in the form of the dividend. So a higher payout ratio is fine with those. But for the most part, I want to see companies that have a dividend payout ratio of below 60%, meaning that less than 60% of their profits are being paid out to their shareholders. That means they're retaining a lot of those earnings, and you want to see some of that because that means they can use that money for buying out other companies, expanding research and development, expanding the business, buying acquisitions, all that other good stuff, because you want to have money left there to grow the business. Let's see. A few things here. It's Saturday. Millionaire mindset. I've gone through this many times. I talk about it in my book, guys. I'm fortunate enough to know and meet a lot of very successful people in my life. I was fortunate even at a young age to have some incredible mentors, multi-millionaires. Yes, I have a guy that I've known quite well in New York that has a B in front of it. He's a billionaire. But one of the things, and just in passing, meeting people when I'm traveling, staying at nice hotels, you rub heels with some successful people for sure. And, you know, over the years, I'm a bit of an observer of people. You know, I like to try and listen more than I talk if I can, especially if I'm first meeting someone, because you can learn things. But, you know, a lot of these people, successful people I meet, they all have a lot of the same traits in common. And I've told you guys about this. And these are the kind of traits that I've had for many, many years that I got from my father and many of my mentors. Our attitude, your outlook on life is generally positive, optimistic, enthusiastic, as one of my mentors used to say. You want to go through life with some enthusiasm. And I see this played out a lot. I've told you guys stories about, albeit Sweet Green, the salad chain in New York or California. Or in maybe a faster, I don't eat a lot of fast food, but we'll say in the service industry. A lot of people, for the most part I see in there, have about as much enthusiasm in that job as taking out the garbage. They don't want to be there. You can tell it. It's all over their face. Every now and again, though, I come across a guy that you can tell is going places. This is just a stepping stone for him or her. This isn't their end goal to work at Sweet Green, even though I think they pay them about $21 an hour at Sweet Green. They pay high because they attract a little bit better employees there. But every now and again, I'll see people, whether it's, you know, a laboring job, sweeping floor, a maid, for instance, in a hotel, that just has something different. They're sure the job isn't the greatest, perhaps, but they're doing it with enthusiasm and they've got a good attitude. And generally, those are the type of people that will probably not stay in that job very long. It's a stepping stone. They're going to school. It's part-time. I can always spot those people. And usually when I talk to them, it's always the same thing. I've been at this job for a year. I'm going to school. I'm going to college. I'm going to university. But it's a good part-time job. It's seeing me through the summer or whatever else. So successful people, no matter what the job is, what they're doing, they've got overall a positive attitude. Doesn't mean you don't complain now and again. There's always so much dark clouds and doom and gloom out there. But for the most part, you're not going to have much success in your life unless you have a positive, enthusiastic outlook on life. And that's why I tell you guys to be very careful with this stuff you see on YouTube, these YouTube channels on Vancouver real estate, or stock investing or everything else. These guys are trying to be YouTube stars. And to do that, you got to hit them with the negative stuff. The sky is falling, the market's crashing, investors are losing money hand over fist, whatever the headline is, that's what gets clicks. And if there's always going to be that, you don't buy a stock or a piece of real estate and it goes up in perpetuity forever. That's not how markets work. They go up and down, good years, bad years, years that they tread water. But you know, you don't want to be around negative people, doomsday stuff. You want to get away from that stuff as much as you can. Focus on you. Focus on what you have control over. Focus on your time management. Focus on things like reading, getting better at your career. If you're a salesman, work on becoming a better salesman. Work on your scripts, work on your presentation in front of the mirror, all that stuff. That's what I did for years and years and years. And when I wasn't doing that, I went to the gym, stayed in shape, ate right, slept right, and all that stuff. You do those kind of things and stay on track with that, you're going to have massive success. The sky is the limit, especially in Canada. We live in one of the greatest countries in the world. The sky is the limit here, or the United States, the two greatest countries in the world. So most people like me and most successful people, we tend to get up early, go to bed early as well. We prioritize our sleep, 8-9 hours of good quality sleep. We stay in shape, we eat right, we stay positive. And we're always trying to get better. I've done lots of blogs on that. It's in my book here if you want the real details on it. The other thing is, you know, multi-millionaires always have multiple revenue streams, and this is something you guys should work towards. That's why I call my book Along for the Ride. It's about buying assets, real estate and stocks that will pay you to hold them passively. You don't have to work for them. And, you know, there is not enough working hours in the day. Even if you're a surgeon, and I know I've got lots of doctors and dentists that watch my blog, you're making $275, $300, $400K a year, and that's fantastic. $500 a year. Although, if you're like me, you know, if you make $500,000 a year, Revenue Canada is taking half of that from me. So now I'm only got $250 left. And then, of course, I've got expenses to run my business and cars and office space and all that other stuff. But what you've got to do is take 10, 15, 20% of that working income and put it to work for you. Max out your TFSA and RRSP and start investing in some real estate perhaps, or, in the stock market, low cost ETFs, and get that money working for you. That's the magic. There's not enough working hours in the day. Sure, you can do okay on a $300,000 salary and not invest, but it's not the way to go. You want to start putting away 10, 15% of that. Won't notice much in the first 10 years, but by the time you get into your mid to late 40s, watch out. Now all of a sudden you've got 60, 70, 80, $100,000 coming in passively on top of your working income, and you're just rolling that money into more stock. It snowballs or starts compounding on you, and that's when you really start to see the magic. But multiple revenue streams. So I've talked about it with you guys. I've got my main business as a realtor and running a real estate team, buying and selling homes. I've got my stock portfolio, which generates 6 figures in dividend income. Didn't do that at first, but I've been at this for well over 2 decades investing in the stock market. I've got my rental income from my tenants, and then I've got a lot of other small little things like my book sales. I've got some other ventures that I invest in privately. I've got my little bit of money coming in from my YouTube channel here, some royalties on some other things that I own. So I've got probably 6, 7 revenue streams, 3 big ones, and then probably another 4 or 5 smaller revenue streams. You guys need to get that too. You at least need to have a couple. Your working income, and then I would say for sure a stock portfolio of some sort. And then, perhaps once you've got a good handle on your TFSA and RRSPs and your cash accounts, perhaps, you might want to buy a 1-bedroom condo downtown, put a tenant in it, and hang on to it for 20 years. You're not going to have a lot of cash flow on it at all in the first 10 years, but that's not what this is about. This is long-term wealth. And give it 10, 12, 15, 20 years, all of a sudden you start chipping off a lot more principal. Your rents continue to go up every year. Your costs go down. You're going to start getting a little better cap rate, but it takes time. It's not get rich quick, guys, when it comes to real estate investing. That's for sure. That's, final few things here. I'll just throw out something here that I got on Twitter from a guy that I follow. He talks about, again, that millionaire mindset, multiple revenue streams, getting really good or elite at the career you're in, whether that's sales or whatever. Try and move up the pay scale, work on yourself, getting better every year. It comes slow, but eventually you'll get into that $200,000-$300,000 income range. But he says, the most valuable asset you'll have in 20 years will be a healthy, fit body that shows discipline. Totally 100% true. Staying in shape is the ultimate. It's everything. And I'm lucky that I got into it way before it was in vogue. I started when I was 16, 17 years old. I started getting into a diet when I was a teenager, way before anyone knew anything about nutrition or eating protein or resistance training. I got lucky. And it's always been with me. When you feel good, and you feel good about how you look, your weight, your strength, it translates to everything else in your life, how you're interacting with people, your energy levels, and everything else. It all ties together. I don't know I know a lot of very successful people, with the exception of maybe a few that are a little not there. The vast majority, 90% of the guys I know that are very successful guys, all have a fitness and diet regimen. Some are strict, much more stricter than others, but even at least they have a basic regimen of 3 or 4 days a week working out, keeping an eye on their diet and trying to get their sleep, limiting their alcohol and that kind of stuff. A clear mind that shows ambition and curiosity, a loving family and loyal friends who care, the freedom to live on your own terms. Yeah, this one's super powerful. So you guys will get there. This is the payoff for the hard work you'll put in your 20s and 30s, is later on you'll have the freedom. That's what money buys. I've told you guys, I live a fairly basic lifestyle. I love to travel. I like experiences. That said, I drive a nice car, I've got a nice home, and I wear nice clothes. I'm a big believer in quality over quantity. I don't have 30 pairs of shoes. I'll buy 2 or 3 high quality pair. Same thing with my clothes. But the biggest thing that investing your money, getting passive income, working hard, building your business, is the freedom that it gives you. It buys you time. And you won't notice it much in your early years, in your 20s and 30s, but give it some time and then it'll start to make sense once these passive income flows come in. Now, if you wanted to, the wife says, hey, let's go away for a couple weeks at Christmas, let's do it. If you want to go away for a nice little trip in the summer, go. If you want to just stay at home and not work for 10 or 12 days and read books, you can do it. It gives you the freedom. The other thing is you can say no to things you don't really want to do. In the early years as a realtor, as an entrepreneur, you're going to take on pretty much all the business you can get. You're still learning, you need clients and all that good stuff. As you get more success, the nice thing is you can turn down business if you don't think it's right for you. And then finally, you have a meaningful purpose that makes you grow. So these things will come as you put in the work, the discipline, the getting up early, going to bed early. You know, it becomes a lifestyle after a while, guys. It's not that hard. Some people might be thinking, oh, it's a lot of stuff you got to do and everything else. Well, it's just getting these things in motion. Once they're in place, it just becomes habit after that. I've always stayed in shape, worked out, eat well. I don't know anything else. I wouldn't be able to take a week off from training and eat junk food. It just wouldn't be anything I could do. I couldn't even force myself to do it. So a lot of these things become habit once they're in place and you've got them in place in a system. And again, it all ties together. Your sleep, your nutrition, training, it all magnifies itself and manifests itself in other areas of your life, relationships, work, how you feel, how you look, and all that other good stuff. Final thing I'll just say here, Saturday, I'm going on a little long here. This is a message. I know I have a lot of young people that watch me that are currently renting, they're tenants. And a lot of people have a bad impression of me. Yes, I am a landlord. I own a large portfolio, as does my dad, and I work with hundreds of investor clients. I've often said here, I have a great deal of respect for tenants because I need them. I've got a lot of tenants right now currently renting my places. Tenants I tell my new investor clients, treat them like gold. They're the goose that keeps laying the golden eggs for you with those rent checks, and treat them with the utmost priority. All my tenants have my personal cell phone number, and if anything they need, call me immediately, and I will take care of it immediately. I treat my tenants like gold. But a message I want for a lot of young people, nothing wrong with renting in the short term while you're getting established. But if you're a young person and you're currently renting in Vancouver right now, you've got to make it your number one priority. This is your number one goal here now, is to get into your first home. And it doesn't have to be $1 million condo. You can start with a $400,000 condo in Richmond on SkyTrain, or something out on New Westminster. I mean, there are studios downtown Vancouver right now. Geez, I've got one in a luxury building right now for $575 with no parking on the 43rd floor in an incredible strata, 4 years old. So that should be, you should be absolutely possessed by this, because renting long-term is going to crush you financially. You will not be able to get these other things going, getting your TFSA and your RSP maxed, if you don't own your own home. Start small, move up from there. Once you're in the market, once you've laid down that down payment and qualified and got in, it's smooth sailing after that. Now, a good percentage of that money you're paying is paying down. You're creating equity two ways. Over the long term, that home will appreciate, not every year, but over the long term, it sure will. And you're chipping down the principal on every payment. With renting, you're not doing any of that. You're just throwing your money into the abyss. So you've got to get into homeownership. The other thing, of course, is that principal residence exemption. It's the only thing we get in Canada. Take advantage of it. It allows you to shelter all those capital gains tax-free 100%. Now, eventually, they're probably going to tax us a few percentage on that. But who cares? You're going to keep 99 or 98%. You've got to get that. So you've got to be almost possessed by this if you're currently renting. You've got to make some changes to your life. You've got to either cut your costs drastically on what you're currently paying for rent by getting a roommate or moving to someplace less expensive, getting a side hustle, earning more money, whatever it takes. But you should set a time frame here, 2-3 years, to save for that down payment. You can make it happen, but you have to set that goal. It is mandatory. If you don't have that, if you can't get into home ownership at a relatively young age, let's call it by your mid-30s or even late 30s, because Vancouver's a tough nut to crack, then you've got to, it's going to be tough for you. And as a matter of fact, if you can't do it in Vancouver, I would probably say move to a more less expensive market, Alberta or the interior or wherever, Saskatchewan. Go someplace like that so you can get into home ownership. Stop throwing that money away on rent, which will then allow you to move up the ladder and these other things I've talked about here. You've got to do that. So that's my message to you guys. If you're renting right now, you're living in Vancouver, hopefully you're tucking away 10 or 15% or whatever. And if not, you've got to make adjustments to be able to do that. Or move to a less expensive locale. No shame in that. Vancouver is the major leagues. Toronto would be the major leagues as well. Pretty expensive. But no shame in going to a less expensive city. Geez, Montreal. I was just in Montreal. Had a fantastic time. Beautiful city. Architecture. You know, you can buy a condo in Montreal for $325,000. It looked pretty good on paper. I'm not all that familiar with the market, but $400K, that would easily be $650 here, is $400 in Montreal. And it's a big city, lots of opportunity, lots of jobs. So that would be my message. You got to get into home ownership first. Some of these millionaire traits, no shortcut to this, guys. Read my book on it, and you don't want a shortcut to this stuff. Just try and get better every day. You'll see the gains and the progress will happen. I'm Owen Bigland. Happy week. Have a good weekend. I'll see you guys next week.